Recording started. This is case study number 13, Saving the Bay Resolution by Corey Harlow. So the first thing we can talk about today is what case study number 13 is. Case study number 13 is called Saving the Bay. It's all about the problems that come about in the Chesapeake Bay and a little bit about other environmental terms which we will go over. So the first thing we're going to go over is the different climes. There's first the Pisonocline, which is just a rapid vertical change in the density of a water column. It doesn't matter what kind of change it is, it's just a general term for a change in the density of the water column. A thermocline, on the other hand, is if the density change is due to a change in water temperature, as in the El Nino effect when that occurs. The warm water begins to dominate the cold water. In the thermocline, as you can see, as temperature increases, that's what causes a thermocline. You can see the thermocline here, and this is the Pisonocline. And then the last one is the halocline, and this is a density change due to dissolved salt concentration. So when salinity decreases, you have a halocline. The next thing it talks about in this chapter is the Coriolis effect. And by definition, the Coriolis effect is an effect that causes any body that moves freely with respect to the rotating solid Earth to veer towards the right in the northern hemisphere and towards the left in the southern hemisphere, regardless of the initial direction of the moving body. So if you don't really understand that, look at this image over here. What we have here is the Earth rotation. If you're in the northern hemisphere, objects deflect to the right. So you're going to be going towards the right. However, if you're in the southern hemisphere, objects deflect to the left, and then you can see that here. But it's pretty much the same way either way, because the Earth is just rotating this way and going around and around. However, it depends on what hemisphere you're in, whether it's right or left. Next, it talks a little bit about the nitrogen cycle. So we're going to try to follow the nitrogen cycle here. First, we start with nitrogen-fixing bacteria living in the legume roots of the nodules. So this could be like an alfalfa plant or any type of legume crop. And then we have the nitrogen-fixing bacteria turning the nitrogen into ammonia and then nitrates. We then have the nitrates coming here and be assimilated into this plant's roots. That, or it gets over here and goes into the atmosphere and becomes atmospheric nitrogen. While animals, such as this rabbit, will eat the decomposers, like this fungi, that contain the ammonia they absorb. So it's just a long cycle with a whole bunch of different things combining one another that keeps the nitrogen cycle going. Nitrogen fixation versus centrifugation will also help you understand the nitrogen cycle. By the way, here to the left is what we call liquid nitrogen. Nitrogen fixation is a process in which nitrogen is taken from its natural form and converted into some sort of nitrogen compound, whether it's ammonia, nitrogen oxide, or nitrate. This is aided by bacteria and other prokaryotic organisms, as we saw in the previous slide. Centrifugation is completes a nitrogen cycle by releasing nitrogen back into the environment in its natural state. Next, it talks a little bit about symbiotic relationships in the phosphorus cycle. A symbiotic relationship is when two organisms depend on one another for survival. The phosphorus cycle is as seen below. We have inorganic phosphorus from various natural and human sources being intaken by plants and converted to organic phosphorus. You then have grazing and predation by animals eating these plants. You then have these animals dying or excreting, and this being broken down by decomposers. And the same with the plants if they die. These decomposers then put the inorganic phosphorus into the water column, which eventually ends up back in the human's body. So it's a very process that just goes around and around. Other terms it talks about in this particular chapter is the biogeochemical cycle, which is a natural cycle describing the movements and interactions through the Earth's spheres of the chemicals essential to life. So it's just all those chemicals essential to life in the cycle in which they rotate through. And then it uses the term anthropogenic, and this is just the human impact on the environment. And here's a neat little image of some environmental impacts and a kind of a cartoon about them. Okay, now we actually get into the case study part. That was more of the reading questions / lessons involved in it. And this is called Saving the Bay. It's all about the Chesapeake Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is the largest system in the United States. 1,500 square miles of habitat to marine life it contains. It filters and processes waste and serves as a buffer zone against any type of storm that may hit along the coast. Now, there's water quality issues going on in the bay, and here's an image of the Chesapeake Bay and the different rivers that flow into it. So you have the James, the York, Rappahannock, the Back, Potomac, Gunpowder River, Northeast River, Chester River, Choptank River, Delaware, Maryland. So a whole bunch of rivers that flow into this Chesapeake Bay watershed. In shallow areas, the excess algae is blocking the sunlight that's important to submerged aquatic grasses needed to grow. This is degrading the habitat and causing the eventual loss of these grass beds. In deeper areas of the bay, the decomposition of dead algae uses up available oxygen in the water. During the warm summer months, oxygen in the bottom waters can only be replenished slowly because little mixing with the high oxygen surface water occurs. Many bottom-dwelling organisms, such as oysters, clams, and worms, which provide food for fish and crabs, cannot survive this prolonged period of low oxygen due to the dead algae. So, let's talk about some resolutions to the bay, and all three of these are images people have taken of the bay. The resolution is pollution prevention actions such as prohibiting the sale of detergents containing phosphorus, upgrading wastewater treatment plants, and improving compliance with permit requirements. I hope you enjoyed this presentation and learned a little bit about saving the bay. I hope you enjoyed.